So for you guys in the car repair business, I have a good one for you. Customer called me to clone a BCM on a Cadillac, 6.2 liter. Clone the BCM, I had to go in there with SPS2, resolve a B101 fault code, resolve that, and I had to do a crankshaft variation learn. So I got the engine up to temperature, went to go snap the throttle, and the variation test learn didn't complete, and immediately we started getting a ticking noise from the engine. The customer heard this, I heard it too, and tried it again, snapped the throttle again, nothing. And so I'm like, well, we probably have an active misfire. So sure enough, cylinder number 7 just came up with a misfire, and I think 1, 4, 5, and 7 on these 6.2 liters have the DOD lifters, if I'm not mistaken. And so a lifter or something with the lifter just went bad, and supposedly they had done the lifters about 2 months ago, and they were pissed. And unfortunately, I'm just doing my job. You have to snap the throttle, and you can't over rev the engine because you're going to hit probably the rev limiter, and the ECM is going to cut fuel, and that's when you hear that engine fluctuation. So there's really no wrong way to do it. I've done hundreds of them. But it just so happens to be that, an issue like that happened, and, they were pretty pissed. The wife didn't want to pay me, and, she just wasn't understanding. But I kindly explained to her, this is something out of my control. The husband was still upset, and I would be upset too. Look, I explained to him very nicely, handled it in a civilized manner. I still got paid, but I just had to explain to them. It's something you have going on with your car, and I always see this in the automotive industry. It's like so many things can happen to a customer's car while it's in the mechanic's possession, and it's not always the mechanic's fault. Sometimes they screw something up, sometimes they don't. For instance, there's another story. I've heard this story so many times. Customer brings their car in for an oil change. Mechanic goes to start the vehicle. When he finishes the oil change, and the car doesn't start. So long story short, the starter goes bad. Like, it can happen. You call the customer up, you tell them, hey, your starter just went bad, and they don't want to hear it. They're going to automatically assume, well, you broke my starter. And a lot of these customers, they know right from wrong, but a lot of them, they always just try to, some of them will try to take advantage of you to try to get you to pay for it. It's like always in the automotive business. Another example is European vehicles. You got to take the engine apart, 10-year-old vehicle, and they have tons of plastic hoses that are under constant heat on that engine, and they become brittle, or they have white corrosion from coolant, and there's no wrong way to remove these hoses without them breaking. Once again, you call the customer back up, you say, hey, hoses broke along the way, and they don't want to hear it. They try to hold you responsible. And I don't know if this happens in other industries. I just feel that it is the worst of the automotive business. A plumber, for example, they come and replace your sink, and as they're unscrewing the pipes or whatever, they find out that the bottom pipe, has the threads stripped out. Maybe they were stripped out beforehand. Maybe they stripped because the pipes were rusted. That's something out of his control. You're not going to get a free bottom pipe from a plumber. It's unless that person has abused, your vehicle or wherever or whatever, your house, your vehicle, whatever. It's really not the mechanic's fault, and this is the hardest thing about the automotive business. And I don't even know any rich mechanics. I don't even know any rich mechanics. I always see these guys like constantly putting the blame on themselves, and you can't. You gotta charge. You gotta just charge accordingly, and this business is tough.